You're listening to the Basketball Lab podcast with your hosts Mark Shannon, Mark Clark, and Marco Corona. They'll discuss all the top news and stories from around the basketball world while giving their opinion and insight. Now, here are your hosts.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shannon, and once again, I'm joined remotely by my co-host, Marco Corona. You know, our other co-host, Mark Clark, needs another load management day to deal with his newborn daughter. So we're flying
good
solo.
Good cause.
Right? Exactly. Good cause.
For sure.
We're gonna fly solo on this one. There's the NBA was on a little bit of a break due to the All-Star break there. So there's not a lot to talk about other than, Blake Griffin. Rumors about Kyle Lowry not being traded, then Kyle Lowry saying, I'm not being traded. I want to retire a Raptor. All-Star weekend. And, NCAA. We're in the conference tourneys right now. It's almost that selection Sunday. So
I thought there wasn't much to talk about. Like you just
I know, right? Well, and then
that's a quiet week in the world of basketball now.
Well,
right?
It's a quiet week in the world of the NBA, I should say.
Sure.
With
right.
NBA players with NBA the second half of the season starting off yesterday.
Unless you were in South Beach, but we'll get into that.
Right, unless you weren't in South Beach, which all the I think 3/4 of the players were basically there other than the All-Stars. Right? I mean, it's not like COVID's around or anything, right? So
No.
Right?
No.
Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, they missed the All-Star game because they tested positive because they had to go to a barber to freshen up to look good for the All-Star game.
I don't know if they're paying their barber cash or they can't get, the team can't get their own barber, but it makes no sense.
Yeah, I'll just give a shout out before we even do this. We're recording this. The Raptors are playing right now.
Yes.
But Kyle Lowry just passed Chris Bosh, right? I believe in assists.
I'm going to light it up. See that? Look at that.
Yeah, exactly. Passed Chris Bosh for second all-time in scoring in Raptors history. So, shout out to Kyle Lowry, probably one of the best, arguably one of the greatest Raptors of all time.
The growth.
Right, exactly, the growth. But, speaking of that, we'll talk about, we'll start off with him, at the end, the news came out, there's been talk about him being traded, him putting his house up for sale, and all this mumbo jumbo about Kyle Lowry and him being traded. And the other day, a report surfaced that Kyle Lowry was possibly going to be traded at the deadline, or he wanted to leave and this and that. And then Kyle Lowry went on to Instagram and basically called it all lies, and then said the next day or the same day said that he wants to retire a Raptor one way or another, whether it's staying for the rest of his career or signing a one-day contract. Right? Obviously, we know he's a free agent at the end of the year, so he's got the decision to move wherever he wants to. But I want to know what your take is on Kyle Lowry and all these rumors. I know we've talked about it through our group chat and stuff like that, but I want to know.
You guys wish we can get a copy of the chats, but
right?
it's a family podcast, or sort of. We kind of try to keep it that way. Listen, like I said to you guys before, and Mark's not here, but I think Kyle Lowry at this point of his career does have carte blanche to basically dictate whether he stays or he goes. I do think based on the statements that he made last night, if you read between the lines, I think that they've had a conversation. There's no doubt about it. He didn't come out and say it because that's the way the Raptors are. They don't really give you much to work with. So people have to dig up these things, right? And if you notice, right, and I'm sure that you would agree with this, it's always the sources from another city, whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's South Beach, whether it's, it never comes from a reporter in Toronto. Have you noticed that?
Yeah,
right?
And that's the thing. It's weird, yeah, right? And I mean, it's always like that in terms of Toronto, especially unless it's the Leafs, then you hear it from Toronto reporters, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Raptors, you don't hear it, right?
Right.
It's other people that are saying it, and then the reports have to be refuted all the time, right? So,
and I think what really irked him is that he was not the source, and the reports were saying, Kyle Lowry has told this, that he wants to do this, when from what he's made it seem, at least, that he hasn't said anything, at least not to anybody on the record. But I do think, going back to my point, that there has been a conversation between Masai, Bobby, and Kyle. If there is a right deal in there, then they would, look at options. But I think, and I stick to my point from last week when we did our crossover podcast as well. I hope you guys checked that out. Kyle Lowry is staying the season. And I think in the offseason, they'll decide whether I think that he goes somewhere else. And based on what he said and how he presented it, he's going to stay the season. He's going to see this through. Going to try to get this team in the playoffs, whatever way they can, right? And go as far as they can. And then in the offseason, if something comes up, whether it's going back home to Philadelphia or otherwise, then he leaves. And then he comes back as a Raptor regardless, whether it's a one-day contract or on a short-term deal. I don't think he's going to take a pay cut. I think he's, you can argue that he's earned the right to basically go and earn another short deal at, a significant amount. I think you're looking at probably north of Fred VanVleet's number on a per year basis, right? But I think this is an okay split, whichever way it happens, whenever it happens. I think both Raptor fans and front office and Kyle are okay with moving on regardless. And there's not going to be an ugly divorce like it has been in the past with the T-Max and the Vincent Lamar Carters and et cetera, et cetera. So I guess we'll just see it out and see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, and you brought it up there earlier about it's not coming from the horse's mouth. It's not coming from the Raptors organization. It's not any of those, right? And it's always one of those things where it's like, well, the sources say that I got a report from a friend of a friend of a friend of Kyle Lowry. They were the ones that said that Kyle Lowry wants to leave. Well, I mean, unless you're hearing it from somebody that's close to him and you're hearing it from their mouth specifically, right? Then at that point, then okay, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. But it's always those reports, and those are the reports that piss me off and get me upset and get me rattled, because at the end of the day, they have no sources, they have no credibility towards it. They're just going off of whatever they want to do, and they're trying to get clicks and clickbait and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. It's basically fantasy basketball trades, and that's what it comes down to a lot of the times, right? It's like, oh, I heard from this source who told me from my barber who knows the guy down the street who knows the Italian guy in the restaurant that he spoke to somebody who knows somebody. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Exactly. And then, you got people on Instagram and Twitter and in Raptors Nation that are like wanting to trade Lowry because they think they're going to get something for him. And I mean, yes, Kyle Lowry is a great player. Yes, Kyle Lowry comes with a championship pedigree. We know that. But we also have to take into account Kyle Lowry is a free agent at the end of the year. He's a rental player. The teams aren't going to give up their best players in order to get 3 months of Kyle Lowry or 4 months of Kyle Lowry, whatever it is for him to leave in free agency. You know what I mean? You're not talking about a guy that's under contract for 3 years, 2 years, where they're going to get some value out of him.
Right.
Right. We know what he brings to a team, and we know what he brings to all that stuff, right? But at the end of the day, his contract is what his contract is. He's got a couple months left on his contract, and I've said this before, and I think I mentioned this on our podcast a few weeks ago as well, that Kyle Lowry doesn't owe Toronto anything. He doesn't owe the fans anything. He doesn't have anything to prove to the Toronto fans. You know what I mean? He's proved his loyalty time and time again with signing extension after extension. He's helped win a championship here, and he's been arguably one of the most consistent, reliable players in Raptors history. And that's why most people call him the GOAT, right? Because he's been arguably one of the most consistent players in Raptors history. And he's put blood, sweat, and tears onto that.
And a lot of charges.
Exactly.
A lot of charges taken.
Literally. Even in All-Star games, he's doing it, right?
That's still my favorite. That's awesome.
You know what I mean? Like the heart of that guy, I don't think I've seen, to be honest with you, a player that has as much heart and drive and determination as Kyle Lowry has.
Right. And he's not the most talented point guard. He's not he's no Allen Iverson. He's not going to give you 35 a night. That's not his game. He is a true leader, right? He's a floor general. Look what he's like. And if you listen to the way he never talks about himself.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? Like,
No.
even especially the last year or so, he talks about the growth of Van Vliet, the growth of Pascal, the growth of Norm. It's like basically he is the equivalent of a team captain in hockey or other sports, where you just basically defer to everybody else. Like, I'm here to lead by example, and I want he's like everybody's dad. Like, I want these guys to grow, and he talks about how proud he is, and I think I don't think I know it comes across genuine, right? No, he's going to get his money whichever way he slices it. Going back to your point as far as trading for him, listen, the wild card in this whole thing, and people don't understand, and that's what people keep throwing these scenarios, that and the other. There's 2 play-in spots in play in each conference, right? There's a lot of teams that are close, right? Those teams are not going to give up young assets to get Lowry as a rental, right? They're going to try to see where they're at in the next few weeks or so. But I think that this comes down to a top team, a top 4 team that has to make a deal for a guy like Lowry, a team that's close. Like, for example, the Wizards are not going to go out and trade for Kyle Lowry. To do what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Not if he's going to, not unless they believe they can beat Brooklyn in the first round. To me, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, you have to look at, now, Philadelphia, maybe that would make sense if it was true, because they're a team that most people feel that are close and they're a piece away from being legit, even though I disagree. I don't think that they're quite there yet, but that's another podcast. But again, who's going to give up assets? Like, what are you exactly doing here? Right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, Michael Grange came out today and basically...
Your favorite guy. That's
right?
your boy.
He said he said the Raptors aren't trading Kyle Lowry by the trade deadline. So
right.
Raptors fans, just if those guys are saying that that's what's happening, he's not being traded. I mean, and anything could happen, obviously, between now and the 25th of March. But Kyle Lowry will be here for the rest of the season. The Raptors are still in a playoff spot. They're still fighting for a playoff position. They're not going to just get rid of guys just to get rid of guys. They all come off the books at the end of the year anyways. Like, it's not like they have anything to lose. Like,
that's a very good point. That's
exactly.
A very good point.
They have nothing to lose. They're not going to win a championship. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Like, I think,
and that's not being negative. That's being realistic.
Exactly. Being realistic. They're not going to win a championship. They're a good
they're
team.
Sure as hell going to try.
Exactly. They have they have a lot of talented guys, a lot of pieces on their roster that if they come together, they could make a run. Will they win a championship? No. I don't think it's conceivable that they'll win a championship with Brooklyn in that division. The Bucks are playing well. There's a lot of good teams in that division that you have to go 7 rounds with them, right? 7 games with them at best if you can force it, right? So, but we know the Raptors aren't going to give up. Masai's not going to give up. Bobby Webster's not going to give up and throw in the towel. There's a lot to play for.
Too much pride on this organization, this team, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if it was up to them, they wouldn't be 17 and 18. No, what are they? 17 and 19 or whatever the case is. Yeah, obviously not. Nobody's happy with that. But I mean, this is again a different year. And by the way, just going back to your point about Lowry and all these rumors, and you mentioned Michael Grange. I did not know until this week that the house that was quote unquote sold and everybody freaked out about. I know this is total gossip. It hasn't been vacated for like a year and a half. So he just sold it just because, right? Like, well, why would you keep a house if you're not living in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. And I know that was made a bigger deal than it was. And the second point I want to make is it's funny how once Lowry spoke out about the rumors, then all of a sudden this other report came out and said, well, teams are probably going to be hesitant because of the price tag. Oh, that's interesting. Right.
Yeah.
So first, the 2 weeks before that, everybody was in on Lowry. Then Lowry says, I'm not being traded. Now everybody's like, he's too expensive anyway. You see what I mean? It's nonsense. Don't believe everything you read, people. That's the story.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing at that point. And I mean, there's another topic. We're talking about trades here. So, and then they were Blake Griffin, one of the guys that was sitting out, waiting for a buyout or a trade, whatever came about. I mean, let's be real. Nobody was taking a flyer on Blake Griffin. It's just like going to be like Andre Drummond. Nobody's going to take a flyer on Andre Drummond for their contracts. They're huge contracts. They're not something that teams are just going to be like, yeah, let's go. We're a contending team. We have the cap space to take on. $20-something million a season. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it was kind of a worst, one of those the worst kept secrets kind of a thing. We knew he was going to a contending team, whether it be the Lakers, Nets, whatever it was.
The usual
Right?
suspects, right?
Exactly. You know he was going to a contending team. But now that Blake Griffin is in Brooklyn with the Nets, with Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, what are the prospects of Brooklyn making a final or winning the championship with those four guys?
I don't. Okay, so for the very same reason I said that, you trade for Lowry if you're a team that's close, right? He can be a difference maker. I'm saying this with all due respect. First of all, shout out to my wife who said to me the other day, I didn't even know he was still playing. Honestly, like,
True.
and if you really think about it, like the average person would be like, Blake Griffin's still a thing? Like, I didn't know he was a thing. Like, we all know he's a thing, but you know what I'm saying, right? This is not Blake Griffin dunking over a Honda Civic.
Yeah, this isn't Lob City Blake Griffin. It's not. Like,
By the way, Honda
this.
Civic, don't sue me if that wasn't the car, by the way. I'm just, we don't have that much money here. But the point is, I don't think he is a difference maker. I think he helps their depth, because so they don't have to gas guys for minutes. He's going to be a small five, from what I understand, to give him a little bit of flexibility. So that's really what it gives you. It gives you roster and depth flexibility. But he's not the guy who's going to make the difference. I mean, at the end of the day, I said, and many people say, and whether I'm right or wrong, we'll find out soon, that the Brooklyn Nets were a championship caliber team, that they were going to at minimum, be in the finals. That's the expectations. It's not like they were like in the brink of, oh my God, like can they get out of the third round? And now you add Blake Griffin's like, oh, it's automatic. It's a wrap. They have no chance. That's not, you're not getting primetime Blake. Right. And with all due respect, even if you were getting primetime Blake, he's never been elite. I'm just going to leave it at that. Like he's a good player. He can dunk. That's nice. Like I'm sure every car company's lined up there to do another commercial with him, but he doesn't do it for me. He doesn't. This deal doesn't excite me in the way that to me it's like this is this moves the needle for Brooklyn. I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, there was a lot of talk. I mean, it still could be a possibility, obviously, with him still sitting out and the trade deadline coming and more than likely not being traded. But Andre Drummond's still out there, right? But I was thinking more Andre Drummond would fit into that team a little bit more. I mean, he's just a little bit slower. But Blake Griffin, and you said it, Blake Griffin isn't the Blake Griffin of old. He's not. Like, he's not the
Whether
Blake
you
Griffin
believe
of old.
he was before or not, he is not what he used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Injuries and all that stuff plays a part. He's not the young, right? He's not the young buck coming from Oklahoma like he was when he first came out, right? But he still can play the game, and there's no questioning that. And he's going to bring something to Brooklyn, but he's not the piece that's going to put them over the top, right? Put them into the championship caliber in terms of, they're guaranteed to win a championship. They're guaranteed to beat the Los Angeles Lakers.
Do you think Brooklyn was going to the finals anyways without Blake?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like you said. It's not a needle mover. It's not something that it was like, oh my God, they got Blake Griffin. Now they're going to win the championship. Not like no, they were.
Do you think? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think the more that you're saying this, I'm trying to. My mind starts to sort of work, which is unusual. But did the Brooklyn Nets get Blake Griffin so nobody else can get Blake Griffin?
It's a good possibility. I mean,
what it's called, right?
Yeah, like I said,
we can't say it, but it's a C block.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 1,100% that could be a possibility. I mean, I know the Lakers were after him, the Clippers. There was a couple teams that were interested in Blake Griffin, right? And that could be part of the reasoning behind it was that they picked him up. They needed depth on their bench. There's no question, especially at the big position after getting rid of Jared Allen and stuff like that when they got James Harden. They definitely needed some depth at the big position.
Big time, absolutely.
Right? You can't rely on DeAndre Jordan. Yes, DeAndre Jordan is still a good basketball player, but DeAndre Jordan isn't the same guy when Blake Griffin was with the Clippers, right? When they both were there, they're not the same. They're both not the same players anymore. They're older. They're a little bit. They're veteran players.
Yeah.
And they're not the needle mover like the big name player that Brooklyn might think they're getting. And
Right.
this could all blow up in smoke, and Blake Griffin could go there and put up 20 points a game.
Then we'll have to issue an apology tweet,
right?
But it's not happening. We're not going to apologize.
Exactly, and we're not apologizing to Robert Covington either, right? We don't have to do that now.
That's our guy, though, right?
Right,
Robert,
exactly.
What's going on, man? Coming to the podcast.
But
we believe in you, man.
Well, not in the skills competition. We didn't believe in him. I mean, let's be real. Like, come on.
We edited that part. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But so I don't know what's going to happen with Brooklyn and if they're going to be able to, if Blake Griffin will be the key piece that they need to pass the Los Angeles Lakers. And I should say it, pass LeBron James and
good correction.
Anthony Davis. Right? Don't get me wrong. The Los Angeles Lakers are a decent team, but they're not depth-wise. They're not amazing. Like, yes, they have solid pieces in LA with Schroeder, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and there's a bunch of pieces there. And then a report came out the other day that the Lakers are looking to upgrade their center position because the Marc Gasol experiment isn't working out to plan.
Man.
Right? And there's a guy, and I've already mentioned him already on this podcast, there's a guy that more than likely going to be bought out, and I could see him ending up in Lakerland, Laker Nation. Andre Drummond. I mean, it just makes sense. It's a perfect fit.
It's going to happen.
Right? It's a perfect fit for him to be with the Lakers. He's got a championship aspirations. They've got a good shot at winning a title. You add him, you add Anthony Davis. I mean, let's be real. You have Anthony Davis and him on the block. That
is a big ass team. Boy.
That's a tough. No, but like, not even that. You know what? You got Thing at the small forward, even though he plays a little bit of the point. He plays more point guard than he does small forward. But you got LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and you'd have Andre Drummond. Like that's a strong physical front three. You know what I mean? Like that's a strong physical front three to get through. And you're talking about DeAndre Jordan, Kevin Durant, and Joe Harris going up against those three guys.
I'll take the three in LA any day.
Exactly.
And disrespect to Kevin Durant, and not to digress from this particular. And it's funny how fast we moved on from Blake Griffin, and that's my whole point. Kevin Durant has not been healthy.
Yeah.
I'm at the point right now that I'm like, is this guy going to be healthy for the remaining of the season, or are they literally taking load management to a whole new level?
Yeah.
Because we know that this guy is elite. Obviously, he is a bona fide scorer, and he can do it all basically. But he needs to play. Like it's one thing practicing because you're rehabbing from his injury, last year and a half before that. But the guy is they keep extending this injury, and I think this is a nagging injury, right? It's different when you come off surgery and then you're rehabbing, but this is a continuous nagging injury. And if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I'm a little bit worried about this situation, because if you take Kevin Durant away from Kyrie and your boy there, the Beard, this is a good team, but they're not a great team. And I'm talking playoff wise.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, they're definitely not that good of a team if you take Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant is the focal point. He's the key piece on that team.
He moves the needle. That's the guy that moves the needle.
100%.
Ask Golden State.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Staying on Brooklyn, I mean, since we're talking about Brooklyn, you might as well go here. I know you mentioned it earlier, and it's been in the news the last couple of days, but Antoine Walker talking about James Harden, basically saying exactly what we're saying about Blake Griffin. He's not the piece. He's right, basically saying what we're saying about Blake Griffin, and James Harden not being the piece to get Brooklyn over the top. He's not the guy to get them there. So I want to know what your takes are on Antoine Walker's and James Harden's little spat they've had over the last couple of days.
Well, first of all, I'm never going to try to side with somebody who played in Boston. So let's just be complete. I'm not switching alliances here. And I had a lot of time to think about this after it happened. And I had to go back to what I said before, because we in this podcast talk about a lot of things that happen and players do or say and how it affects how people look at perception, because there's perception and reality, right? So basically, for those people who don't know, Antoine Walker came out and said that, like you said, I don't know if James Harden is a guy that you can win with, right? But and you always add with all due respect, blah, blah, blah. Which to James Harden, had a few things to say. He defended himself as anybody would, I guess, right? But then he went on the attack and said, I don't listen to people without any credibility. So it's not like Antoine Walker was a G League guy or, a bench guy or a end of the bench sort of guy. Like, the guy had some very good years in the NBA. I believe he actually ended up winning a championship eventually in Miami,
yep.
Right? Which a lot of people did with LeBron, but that's another story. I believe he was there with LeBron, right?
Yes, he was.
So it got me thinking, like, why can't you just, basically state your point? This is what I do, and this is my game. And maybe he hasn't watched me in a while, and this is what I've done since I've come to Brooklyn. But I don't understand the whole credibility thing. Like, he was really defensive, and they're going back and forth, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I'll ask you now: are players too sensitive to criticism?
Oh, absolutely. I do. I think they're definitely too sensitive to the criticism. We've seen it before with other players. I mean, sometimes the criticism isn't warranted, I should say.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, what Antoine Walker said wasn't that far-fetched, to be honest with you.
It wasn't inflammatory. He wasn't tearing him down.
He basically said, he's like, I'm not a James Harden guy, and it's not personal, but you can't win with that style. Anytime it takes a guy 6, 7, 8 dribbles to get to where he has to go, that's a problem. It works today because it's a more of a pick-and-roll league, so he gets away with a lot of things now. But I would not leverage my future for James Harden. I mean, in all honesty, I don't know what he did where he came across attacking James Harden. At the end of the day, let's be real. James Harden is a great offensive player. There's no questioning that.
No doubt about it.
Right? I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say James Harden isn't a good basketball player. He's not, right? He doesn't do anything. He doesn't play defense. He plays no lick of defense. You know what I mean? Yes.
Is that a new kind of style? No lick of defense.
Exactly. He plays no lick of defense. Like, not a lick of defense.
NLD.
Right, exactly. Him and Trey Young are like the leaders of the NLD group there. No lick of defense group.
Boy. Can we put it as a hashtag? No, NLD.
We will. When I post this up, it'll be hashtag NLD. Right? No lick of defense. There you go. But no, he's not. They're not saying anything wrong. And I mean, he jacks up threes like it's nobody's business. Yeah, and he said it right. This is a pick and roll league. And I'll go back to our topic from last week, the Candace Parker the Candace Parker topic, where she schooled Shaquille O'Neal on it. This game has gone to it's a pick and roll league where the 3-point shooters are wide open all the time. So you have to get above the pick and roll to stop them. Right? So it's not like the game has changed. The game isn't the same way it was before. But for James Harden to be going at Antoine Walker, at the end of the day, Antoine Walker may not have been the most prolific scorer in the entire NBA.
Correct. Yeah.
But Antoine Walker...
I think he knows that.
Right, exactly. Antoine Walker, and to say he has no credibility, I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous.
That's false. That means that you don't know the game.
Exactly. Antoine Walker molded a good career. A pretty solid career, 17.5 points over his career. He's, like you said, he won an NBA championship with Miami. Yes, it was later on in his career with Miami, but Antoine Walker was a really good 3-point shooter. He was a really good player. And it's not like he has no credibility. It's like he was a bum that played on the sidelines or whatever. Yeah. He was a guy that averaged a healthy amount of minutes, was a key player on most of his teams. I think it's just ridiculous that James Harden, and I think a lot of players, going back to your point, yes, the NBA is soft. The players have gotten a lot softer. They don't deal with the criticism. They don't. They shy away from it, and not they shy away from it, but they get all defensive every time somebody says something bad about them or that they don't agree with.
Right.
And I get it. A lot of them feel that they deserve the respect and they deserve the credit. But
I think this is a classic case of old school versus new school.
yeah,
Right? And I'm not going to be that old school guy, even though I'm, a little significantly older than you. But you have Antoine Walker, who is in his mid to late 40s, versus, a guy who's in his prime.
Yeah.
Right? A guy who played in the early 2000s, late 90s, or whatever the case is, versus now. Right, where you have a game who 3-point shooting, step back jumpers, draw fouls, this and that, versus a guy who had to draw to the lane, right, et cetera, et cetera. The game has literally evolved, and it's not a bad thing, right? But you look at Antoine Walker's, as you were talking here, and I did cheat. You're looking at a guy who averaged 17.5 points a game, 7.5 rebounds per game, right? 3 assists, NBA champion, 3-time All-Star, NBA All-Rookie, NCAA champion. With I forget where did he go? Kentucky,
I think so.
So he's no slouch. Would I ever pick him in my top 10? Obviously not. But to say that somebody has no credibility just because they don't agree with the way you play, I think it's a bit soft, right? And it's funny, I go back to my original thought, which was the criticism of Shaq to Spider Mitchell. Spider Mitchell even had a better response. He had nothing to say. He's like, all right, I'm just going to go out and prove it. And to me, that's even more of a mature response than it was by your boy there, James Harden, right? Like I don't know. Guys need to just relax.
Yeah. Well, one question I have just before we end off on the topic is, if Antoine Walker, knowing he was a decent 3-point shooter, he was a good, like that kind of a player, he's a spot up shooter, would he be what kind of a player would he be in this thing? Would he fit into the new style of play?
Would he? Yes.
Right.
I think so.
I think he would thrive off of it. I think you maybe
think so.
Right. I think you may be talking.
If you're talking about a guy who averaged 17.5 in an era where 95 points in a game was wow, that's terrible defense. And the best defensive team in the NBA now is allowing 105 to 6 a game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then he'd be pretty good. So maybe you take his 17.5 and you turn it into 24.
Right, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. And maybe he's averaging 45% from 3-point line.
Yeah,
but he's shooting a higher number, right? So that's what I just wanted to see if you thought. I think the same thing. I think Antoine Walker would be a perfect fit into this NBA because of the fact that there's 3-point shooting has become the name of the game now. We talked about it before with the All-Star weekend and the All-Star game taking over for the dunk competition in terms of notoriety. And so I think Antoine Walker would definitely fit into that, into this league right now.
There you go. Absolutely.
Right. I just mentioned that the All-Star weekend just happened over the weekend. We had the 3-point competition. We had the skills competition with Robert Covington. Right, we had the NBA All-Star game.
Hit us up.
Right, the NBA All-Star game, a bunch of fools playing pickup. Right, and then we had the dunk competition, whatever it was. I don't know what the hell that was, but I mean, it was something. Right, that was in the middle of
the halftime show.
Yeah, it was like, man, they should have just given them the trampolines, like those trampolines we see at the Raptors games.
I hate that guy. Stuff. No, I can't. No, can we not? No, come on, man.
No?
If I see that guy, no. I missed the game, but I don't miss that part.
No, but I'm saying, not those guys. Just put all those guys on trampolines. They could have, maybe the guy would have been able to kiss, maybe Cassius Stanley would have been able to kiss the rim, right? Instead of...
He kissed something.
Right? He definitely didn't kiss. Yeah, oh, man. But talking about All-Star Weekend, I mean, the skills competition, we'll start with that, going into that. I mean, Domantas Sabonis was the winner of the skills competition there, right? The big man from Indiana was the winner of the skills competition. I mean, in all honesty, Sabonis ran away with the competition. I think the first two ones, close. Right? The first 2 ones, it was like, he got to the 3-point shot and it was like bang bang. They were in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, good for him. Again, I'm glad that he stood out and people got to see a little bit of him because when you play in Indiana, you don't really get it highlighted. You don't really get primetime games, and people don't know who he is for the most part, unless you're a scoreboard watching and fantasy pool, etc. But good for him. I mean, like I said, and like you said as well, it wasn't the most glamorous thing. right? And it's funny because it ended up being what, Vucevic versus Sabonis. Was that the final?
No, I think it was Chris Paul.
Chris Paul, yeah, he laid an egg. No, yeah, well, either way, Chris Paul laid an egg anyway.
Yeah, it was Chris Paul versus Sabonis in the last one.
But no, I'm happy that Sabonis won. I've said this before. I watched his dad back in the days playing with Portland. The big fella over there who was a great passer, right? Arvydas Sabonis. There's a bit of a nostalgic connection there. So I'm happy that he won. But other than that, I mean, you take that. The dunk contest was a wash. I don't know what the hell that was. The kissing the rim or lack thereof, that was. Wow, I don't know if that was a grade 8 high school dance. I don't know or grade 8 dance, or I don't know what the hell that was. And the 3-point competition went exactly like I said it was going to go. I just thought I'd add that out there. I picked the guy who won. So I'm, pumping my own chest. You do it all the time. So
never. Me?
Yeah.
Me. Never.
Okay.
No, but going back to the skills competition, I mean, I think this is part and parcel with how the game has gone. But you look at the last since 2016, I think it's been 7 guys. The last 7 winners of the skills competition have been big men.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You had Karl Anthony Towns in 2016 in Toronto. You had Kristaps Porzingis in New Orleans in 2017. Spencer Dinwiddie in 2018. Then you had Jason Tatum in 19. Bam Adebayo won in last year, and then you got Domantas Sabonis. So it's part and parcel with the way the game is going that a lot of big men are becoming a lot better passers.
Which you have to be.
Right, exactly. You have to be better passers. Look at Nikola Vucevic. Look at Jokic. Domantas Sabonis. Now, obviously, you look at a lot of these big men. They're better passers.
Versatile.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're better passers than some of the point guards out there right nowadays. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
or you have to when you're doing a lot of the pick and roll.
Exactly. Well, exactly. You're right. Absolutely. And then you're moving on to, the 3-point competition. I mean, Mike Conley, he looked really good in that 3-point competition.
Yeah, he did.
Like for a guy,
I forgot he was a lefty, by the way. I really actually did forget that he was a lefty.
Right? He would have been the first, I think they were saying first lefty to ever win the competition.
I believe so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But he lost by 1 point, but he put on a good show for a guy that came in, a couple of days prior to the All-Star game, was last minute into the 3-point competition when Devin Booker my boy Devin Booker was knocked out because of an injury.
Yeah.
But he came in and I think he stole the show. Yeah, Steph Curry won, which I don't think anybody really had any questions that Steph Curry was going to win.
That was no surprise. Yeah.
Right? Exactly. There was no surprise there. But the fact that Mike Conley made it as close as he did and was able to shoot the ball as well as he did in the 3-point competition, I was really impressed with that. And like I said, the 3-point competition to me was the highlight of the night in terms of the All-Star weekend for me, or the All-Star Sunday, I should say, was the highlight of the night for me, for sure. And then, the dunk competition was purely, literally, I turned it off. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, that was horrible. Like,
some points you're like, oh, that's nice. But it's not like I'm going to remember this 2 years from now.
I'm probably not going to remember it in a week's time from now, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Right? No, I don't think like.
That's harsh.
And I said it before, and I said it on the other podcast that we were on, and I said it last week on ours, that the dunk competition has lost its luster. It's not the thing where everybody's just like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch the dunk competition.
It's all about the names. I'm telling you right now.
Exactly.
All disrespect to the 3 guys that competed. They and they put up a decent show. I'm not going to be harsh about it, but it wasn't like, stop what you're doing right now because the dunk contest is on.
Right. And that's the thing. Like back in the day, like I used to rush home and make sure I was there sitting on the couch watching the dunk competition.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see Vince Carter, T-Mac, Jason Richardson, all those like the Dwight Howards, Nate Robertson, all these like big dunkers who had like a lot of ability to dunk in a dunk competition, because they were going to bring it every single competition, right?
Yep.
Zach LaVine, bro. He's another guy that brought it on occasion when he's done it. I think he's won it twice, right? And he's brought it. Over the last few years, it's gone downhill in terms of, like, there's the high profile players aren't going to the dunk competition. And maybe that is because, like what Mark said last week, in fear of injury or whatever it is, there's a lot of
protecting yourself,
right? Yeah. Protecting yourself. And I think All-Star Weekend has sort of lost its luster a little bit. I think players are more in tune with their bodies. They're more in tune with their minds and stuff like that. So if they could somehow not be in the All-Star game, they're not going to be in the All-Star game. You know what I mean? Like, right. Damian Lillard was selected to be in the three-point competition. He pulled out, right? Damian Lillard knows that he's going to need to be relied on in the second half for Portland if they want to stay where they are, right? So, and we're talking about a season that's COVID's around and all that stuff is still here. So anything can happen in this season. You know what I mean? We'll talk about it in a bit. You look at the ACC tourney with Duke getting COVID, and they're knocked out of the ACC tourney, which knocks them out of the March Madness basically because they're not getting in. They needed a deep run in the ACC tourney to even get a shot at the March Madness. But in the NBA, we've seen it. Teams have been ravaged by COVID. COVID has taken players away, postponements, all that stuff. Anything can happen when it comes playoff time, right? Hopefully by then, most of the players will get their vaccines, or vaccines will be in arms by then, and then we won't have to worry about COVID that much. But we'll see what happens in regards to that. But I just think, like I said, I think All-Star Game has lost its luster. I think it's not as intense, or people enjoy it as much as they used to.
There's no draw, and I think what you said before is like it's become a pickup game with a bunch of what is it called? What do you call it?
I said a bunch of fools playing pickup.
Right. So even leading into that, like if a dunk contest, you don't have any brand names. Like you're telling me you don't want to see Zion, right? Ja Morant, right? Like if you're going to bring in players who are not even participating in the All-Star game, then why don't you bring in a guy like Ja Morant, right?
Well, and that's the thing, and maybe that goes back to my point. Sorry to interrupt, but Mark's point too from last week, the injury, and a lot of these players not wanting to go through it. Right? We've seen LeBron James, arguably one of the best dunkers in the game in terms of highlight reel dunks, has chosen not to do a dunk competition. Right? You know what I mean? So ever. So,
has he ever done it?
No, he's never done it, and that's what I'm saying.
Now, does he have to? No. Would we like to see it? Yeah.
Exactly.
I would.
I'd
like to see Zion versus LeBron.
Exactly. I'd love to see, like you said, Zion, Ja Morant, and a guy that I would love to be in there right now. I would put those three up against each other. Anthony Edwards. As long as he can dunk on Yuta Watanabe, right? That's about it.
Well, so what we'll do is we'll just get Yuta right under the rim, right, and then just let him. Poor Yuta, I like Yuta.
Right? Exactly. I like him too, but I'm just saying,
for the team.
But exactly. But Anthony Edwards, another guy that's got bunnies. He's got hops. Like he can get up there, and we've seen it. As Raptor fans, we saw it, right? So those would
still feel it in our soul.
Exactly. And those are three guys that I would actually enjoy seeing. I would actually tune in and say, you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing those three guys in a dunk competition and seeing what they throw down. Yeah. Right. We've seen Zion dunk pregame at Duke when he was with Duke and stuff like that. We know Ja Morant, for a little guy, he's got hops too. He's got bunnies too. He could get up there. He could got some of the nastiest dunks out there. Yeah. So I'd love to see those three guys go head to head in a dunk competition in the future. I guess we'll see maybe down the road that the NBA dunk competition will come back in terms of the star-studded atmosphere that we used to see, and everybody's excited to watch it, and it's not as much of a gimmick as it is now. Right? And I just mentioned it a couple seconds ago. Duke, out of the ACC tourney. Won't get into March Madness. They're out of the March. For the first time in a long time that they won't be representing Durham, North Carolina in the March Madness. So, and then we had Kentucky They went out to Mississippi State, I believe, today. Right?
Yep.
They were knocked out by Mississippi State, which means that more than likely both Kentucky and Duke won't be in March Madness for the first time in a long time.
1976.
Right?
I was able to confirm that. 1976.
Right? That's crazy. That's a long time, and those are two storied teams, storied colleges,
sure.
like storied.
100%.
Right? Exactly. So, and I know you posed a question to me, and what does it mean for them not being in March Madness? Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a blessing in disguise, so to speak?
I think it's the first and the last. First of all, for those of you who may not know, I am a Tar Heel fan, thick and thin. And at any time that Duke loses is a good day for me. But not like this. Not because of COVID. This is unfortunate. And even as a fan, as a Duke hater, and I don't mind saying that, but I'm also a fan of the game. Like, you want to see the best on best. And Duke wasn't having a great year by any means, stretch of the imagination. They were actually a bubble to be even a bubble team, right? Which means, for those of you who may sort of trying to say what the hell he's talking about, is that they basically had to win out and then hope that they were, part of it, right? But now in this particular case, they don't even get a chance because of what's going on in the world. So that's unfortunate, number one. And then you told me the circumstances of what's going on campus in Duke, right? Kentucky, different story, but sort of the same. That was just lack of play. And if you listen to some of Calipari's comments today, my guy ripped them a new, what. He was not too happy about that performance. As far as what that means for the tournament, I think it loses a little bit of that luster right now. Duke's and Kentucky spots can be somebody else's blessing. And I think that's where the only place that the blessing comes, because we're all used to seeing Duke. We're all used to seeing Kentucky. What that means, a Final Four, Elite Eight or Sweet 16, that's a whole other story. But to not have Duke and Kentucky, like one or the other, but both, that is, if I'm the NCAA, I'm not too happy about it.
Yeah. I mean, before I came on this, I was thinking, like I said, you posed this question to me in the group chat, and I was like thinking about it before we got on the podcast, and I wanted to have the right answer in terms of that. Yes, losing Duke and losing Kentucky is huge for March Madness. They're two, like I said, storied franchises, been around a long time, produced some of the best talent in the NBA. But at the end of the day, it opens up the door for teams that have played very well this season.
Yes, of course.
Right? And we've seen it over the last maybe 10 years or so. NCAA basketball, men's basketball, women's basketball, whatever it is, it's become the parity in terms of talent and level have come down like drastically in terms of like there's a lot of level playing fields. There's a lot of upsets.
Yep.
Right? Like we saw one today. Georgetown upset a team to get into the next round, right? I think they upset Villanova, right? Yeah. So you're talking about Villanova, another storied franchise that's been around for a while, won a national championship here and there, and Georgetown was able to knock them out, and they haven't had a good season. So it opens the door for a lot of teams that I'll even talk about it today. Syracuse, another team that's in the ACC.
The Orange. Right,
the Orange have played well. Buddy Boeheim, they lost today to Virginia on a last three by Reese Beekman, but they've played well down the stretch. Yeah. They played well so far in this tournament, and they were one of the first four out, if I remember correctly. And I think they'll be not a lock, but I think they will get into the tournament.
I think so.
And I think
they'll get it.
Thankfully, not thankfully, but unfortunately, due to Duke's
COVID results,
right? Yeah. COVID results and exit from the ACC tourney. It'll help Illinois among other teams that it may help, but I feel bad for a guy like Matthew Hurts from Duke. You know what I mean?
Yes.
A guy that last season was having a really good season. Duke was going to make the NCAA tournament last year, and it got called off because of COVID, right? This year, in all honesty, they probably wouldn't have made the tournament
Yeah.
right? They were in tough. They would have had their next game was going to be a tough game against Florida State,
Yeah.
but they still had a shot, right? They still had a shot, and these COVID things took it away from them again. And it's a guy like him who I think he's a senior. He arguably might not get into another tournament if he decides to go pro or whatever. But hey, I feel bad for those guys, the guys that are the seniors that didn't get a chance last year and won't get a chance this year. And then I just was looking at Hertz's Twitter where he said, where he tweeted, work so hard for this kind of a thing, right? And then it got all taken away like that. And then you got people in the comments basically saying you wouldn't have made the tournament anyways.
That's not the point.
Like, you guys sucked. Relax. You weren't making the tournament. That's not the point, man. The point isn't about that, right? That's not the point. The point is the fact that these guys have worked their asses off to get where they are, right? You know, they're going to college, doing classes, playing this sport, not getting paid to play it. Well, we'll put that out there too. They're not getting paid to play NCAA basketball. And out of not their own volition in terms of that, but COVID, a virus, is a reason why he'll never get to play in an NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the part that irks me, and that's what bothers me in terms of it, because at the end of the day, yes, Duke struggled this season. There's no questioning that.
Yeah.
Kentucky, right? Kentucky was, I think they were coming into the season as one of the top 25 teams they were projected. And they struggled right out the bat. COVID hit them, and there was a lot of different things, and they were missing players, weren't getting enough games, and I get that. But other teams were able to battle through that. We're able to battle through the COVID test, the COVID results, and all that stuff. And look at Miami, for example, right? Miami was able to play with 7 players for most of the season because of COVID results and scholarships and all that stuff. And they were able to play very well in the tournament this year and down the stretch in the season. So, I mean, yes, like I said, Duke and Kentucky being out is a major blow for maybe March Madness, like NCAA, and the bottom line in terms of the money-wise. But like I said, it opens up the door for a lot of other teams that don't get the opportunity because Duke and Kentucky are always in the tournament.
Right. And, again, this is for, from a business standpoint, if I'm CBS and TBS as well, who do some of the broadcasts as well. Yeah, I'm not necessarily happy about it because that's a big draw, right? But on the other hand, again, for all those other teams that normally wouldn't get highlighted, this is your chance, right? And again, the beauty about this tournament, once it gets started, it's one and done. We're not talking about a 5-game series or a 3-game best of 3 or whatever the case is. This is where you see the best basketball because these kids go, balls to the wall, man. And same thing for the ladies on the other side of the tournament as well. Don't get it twisted. If anybody who hasn't watched NCAA basketball, women's or men's, please take the time to do so. Follow these, ladies and gentlemen, and watch the intensity. It's basically like watching professional Game 7 every single day. The caliber of play is not necessarily the same level as the NBA is. It's a little bit more, organized and choreographed, but the effort, the emotion, the passion, and by the way, we're missing the fans this year, which really sucks. It's outstanding. It's one of my favorite times of the year, March Madness. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
go Heels.
Right. Speaking of which, but I think they're down 3 right now.
3 at the half. It's okay.
It's still early on in the game, but you mentioned women's basketball, NCAA women's there. Paige Beckers, UConn freshman. She was named the Big East top freshman of the year, but she's arguably depending on how long she goes for. Obviously, I'm assuming she'll be there for her 4-year stint at UConn, but she'll go down as arguably one of the best UConn players to ever play the game. Like, she's ever played for UConn. She's a talented player. She's got a lot of talent. She can get to the basket, shoot threes. She can do a lot on the floor. And again, UConn, we know their storied history in terms of women's basketball, especially. They're 23-1 on the year. So I think they're going to be a tough team to beat when it comes to the
They always are.
right. I think they're going to be tough, especially when you have a player like we saw last year, Sabrina Ionescu, when she was there with Oregon. But Oregon, or which one was it? I don't even remember
Oregon.
now.
It was Oregon,
right? Yeah,
yes,
I'm pretty sure
Oregon.
It was Oregon.
Yeah. No, it
right?
was Oregon. Yeah.
You had her, and Oregon was a really good team. So I'm looking forward to both tournaments. I'm looking forward to the women's tournament and the men's tournament, seeing who actually comes out on top. I think the men's tournament, it's wide open. I think, in all honesty, I think, you got Gonzaga, you got Baylor, you got Michigan, you got those guys to the top 4 seeds. But I think it's wide open in terms of who could take this. There's a lot of good teams. The team that I'm really interested in seeing and how they do, they're another team. They're in the Big Ten there, but it's Illinois.
The Fighting Illini.
I think the Fighting Illini are going to be a team that a lot of teams should have to that are going to have to worry about. You got arguably he could be the National Player of the Year if Luka Garza doesn't win it, but Ayo Dosunma, right? He's had an outstanding season this year, so I'm looking forward to seeing how the Illini do in terms of that and what they can do in the tournament. And see if they can maybe knock off Michigan in the finals there, right? But we'll see what happens.
Listen, at the end of the day, I can't wait, first of all, for Selection Sunday, which is this Sunday, obviously.
Yeah.
And we will have more coverage on the NCAA tournament, no doubt, and you'll see the posts coming out and our us talking nonsense. And I don't know if you've done your bracket yet, your virtual bracket creation. We don't have the brackets yet, obviously, because Selection Sunday is not done yet. But we'll have some fun with this. Just to go back to the women's basketball for 1 second, if anybody gets a chance to watch it, I don't know if you can go to your PVR or go back to your on-demand, whoever your provider is. There was a feature with Sabrina Ionescu with Ernie Johnson on, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday. And it's a fantastic feature, half an hour of just talking to her, and just she talks about Kobe Bryant and her influence and playing women's basketball, and obviously her injury that pretty much put her out last year as well. So, but again, just getting to know her a little bit more, and I do think that women's basketball doesn't get the feature that they should, and we try our best here to try to cover it as well. But if anybody's out there listening to this and watching this, please go back and, check whether you're with Bell or Rogers or whoever your provider is on demand, and look at Ernie Johnson. I forget what the name of the show is called. Maybe we'll get it up on the Instagram in a bit, actually, once I find it. But phenomenal show. Great feature, half an hour of great basketball. She's amazing. She can kill it. By the way, I didn't know she had a twin brother.
Yeah. Didn't know that either.
You'll learn that if you watch it. Just saying.
Yeah, and shout out to the Lakeland Magic in the NBA G League today, right? Winning the title, the playoffs today, the NBA G League playoffs today. They beat the Blue Coats. The Blue Coats beat the 905, right? Yeah, the Blue Coats beat the 905, and then the Lakeland Magic were the winners. They ended up winning today. They ended up winning today. I look at it, 97-78. They ended up being the Delaware Blue Coats. There you go. So shout out to them for being the first champions of 2021 in basketball. Nice. Right now we'll look forward to seeing who wins the men's titles, the women's titles, and then we'll look forward to the NBA finals in June there. By the way, the show is called NBA Together, if anybody's looking it up. And it was recorded a while back, but I think they re-released it again. So it's called NBA Together. Google it. I'm sure it's on YouTube or on your local provider. So, yeah, and guys, again, if you're watching this, click the subscribe button down below. Click the little bell as well, right? The little bell that you see there. Get notifications for when we released episodes. Like I said, we're probably going to do a bracket breakdown or a bracket preview before the tournament starts on next Thursday. So look out for that as well. Follow us on Instagram. We're going to be posting all the scores from the NCAA tournament, all the NBA things. We're going to be dropping a few other different things throughout the weeks in terms of different types of stuff, whether it's the Who'd You Rather Wednesdays, Top 5 Fridays, stuff like that. So look out for it. Follow us on our Instagram, at the B-Ball Lab. You can also follow us on our Twitter, same thing, at the B-Ball Lab. But you can find our podcasts on Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube, like I said. There's Spotify as well. So we're everywhere you can basically find us. So
we're on the bus, even though people don't take the bus anymore because it's weird, right? We are everywhere. You Google us, we're there. And if you have something that you want us to cover a little bit more of, your favorite team, even if you're a team that we don't really like, no, I'm just joking. Like, let's, give us a shout out or hit us up on Twitter or on many of our social media platforms that we have. We'll be more than happy to talk about it. Women's basketball, men's basketball, college, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, if you want to do a little bit of a, Q&A as well, sure, let us know. We can do it as well. We are creative here at the Basketball Lab. This is why it's called the Lab, because we just like to mix it up.
Right, exactly. We got to get in the lab and do different things. You know what I mean? So, like we said, just give us a follow, send us the message. We'll always answer our DMs or our messages. So. Just hit us up.
Let loose. Let's go. Go Heels.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Basketball Lab Podcast. Thanks for joining us this week on the Basketball Lab Podcast. Make sure to follow us on our social media. You could follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the B-Ball Lab. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Basketball Lab Podcast, and you could also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music.